Why was the radio crackling now, after 3 silent years in exile? Snow hissed against the cabin window like whispers from ghosts she thought she'd buried. The old shortwave set, her one link to a world she'd sworn to leave behind, spat out static, then a fractured voice fighting through the storm. Repito, 24 hombres atrapados espinazo, no hay extracción. Mariana Vipera Suarez froze, the metal mug halfway to her lips. The bitter coffee trembled, dark liquid shivering against porcelain. 3 years of silence. 3 years since the Council of War stripped her rank, her name, her purpose. 3 years since she'd built these walls of timber and snow high enough to muffle every memory. She almost didn't reach for the radio. Almost. But the voice on the other end, Jaime Villalobos, the only officer who had ever defended her, sounded raw, frayed at the edges. Desperation has a timbre you can't mistake. Mariana pressed the transmit key. "Repita las coordenadas," she said, her own voice lower than she remembered, smoked, weathered by solitude. Static swallowed the response, then coughed it back. "San Cristobal, Complejo Minero, Hernan Mancilla Rodados." The name was a knife. Hernan Mancilla, the serpent she'd chased 3 years ago, the trafficker the High Command had insisted did not exist, the ghost who cost her her life. Her hand tightened around the mic. A dozen emotions warred in the silence: rage, dread, longing, a reluctant spark of duty. She looked at the Barrett rifle dismantled on the pine table. Even in exile she'd kept it oiled, every piece immaculate. She told herself it was habit, but maybe she'd known all along that the past would come knocking. She stood, boots whispering against wooden planks, and crossed to the wall where an old photograph hung, her unit in some nameless desert. Smiling faces under a merciless sun. Among them Javier Mendez, the man who had testified against her, his words a guillotine. She traced a finger over his frozen grin. Mendez was out there tonight, trapped, bleeding, maybe dying. She hated him, and she couldn't let him die. The decision formed itself. Not heroism, never that, something quieter, sharper. A code she couldn't kill no matter how far she ran. She laid the photo down and began to pack. The cabin was bare. A cot, a table, a wood stove, shelves lined with ammunition instead of books. Years of exile had stripped her life to essentials, gear to survive the mountains and memories to survive herself. She slid 42 rounds into her pack, each polished like a prayer. 42 bullets, 42 judgments, enough to save 24 men, or not. The storm outside snarled against the eaves as she strapped the Barrett's case to her back. The motorcycle waited beneath a crust of ice, its engine reluctant to wake. She kicked it alive, and the sound shattered the mountain stillness. As the tires bit into snow, memories bit deeper. 3 years earlier, Operation Sentinella, the mission that should have been routine. She warned them. Mancilla's network was burrowed deeper than the intelligence suggested. Velázquez, the colonel she'd trusted, dismissed her concerns. "You're seeing ghosts, Vipera," he'd said, using the call sign that once felt like honor. But she wasn't wrong. A general died, evidence vanished, and somehow the blame stuck to her. They said she panicked. They said she misfired. They said the shot that killed Salgado was hers. She could still hear the verdict echoing through the tribunal hall, the scrape of Velázquez's chair as he stood, the cold avoidance in her comrade's eyes. Even Javier's, especially Javier's, when he repeated the lies that condemned her. The road to the Espinazo twisted downward, a ribbon of ice and shadow. The headlight carved tunnels through snowflakes that fell like ash. She checked her watch. 73 minutes to the valley. In 73 minutes, 24 men could be corpses. In 73 minutes, she could decide whether her life still meant something. She whispered to the storm, not for them, for the truth. The wind didn't argue. Far below, the valley sprawled, black rock and white snow, the abandoned San Cristobal mine squatting like a rusted carcass. Its towers clawed at the sky. Somewhere inside, men were begging for air, praying for miracles. And somewhere else, Hernan Mancilla was waiting, smug in the belief that the woman he'd destroyed was gone forever. Mariana parked the bike behind a ridge and killed the engine. Silence rushed back, heavy and absolute. She crouched in the snow, letting the mountain's breath sink with her own. She unpacked the Barrett, her fingers moving without hesitation. Bolt, barrel, scope. Every motion was muscle memory, an old ritual she'd performed in deserts, jungles, cities under curfew. She scanned the valley through the thermal scope. The landscape came alive, white heat against black rock, too many signatures, sicarios circling the main building like wolves, others hidden in tunnels waiting to finish the kill. And there, the cluster of faint, flickering lights, the trapped unit, some burns dim, barely alive, wounded. Her jaw tightened, 42 rounds. She started to calculate distances, wind, bullet drop, until math became instinct. The first shot wasn't meant to kill. The Barrett roared, the sound rolling down the mountains like thunder. The round slammed into a metal tower near the main gun nest. Sparks flared. As she'd hoped, every enemy sniper snapped their scopes toward the echo, exposing themselves as flares of heat. "Too easy," she muttered. Her second shot wasn't mercy. A figure crumpled soundlessly. Third shot. Fourth. The mountain became her stage again, the rifle her voice. 11 men fell before panic even set in. But as the bodies cooled, something prickled at the edge of her vision, a glint almost imperceptible to her right. A reflection no ordinary shooter would notice. She slid her eye along the ridge. There, 340 meters away, a rival scope. Patient, perfectly still. Not one of Mancilla's hired guns. This was someone else, someone like her. She didn't need a name, but one surfaced anyway, Dmitri Clov. The Spetsnaz legend whispered about in every sniper circle. If Clov was here, Mancilla's reach was deeper than she'd guessed. This wasn't a cartel job. This was international, coordinated. The kind of conspiracy she'd been punished for exposing. A bitter laugh escaped her lips, swallowed instantly by the storm. So that's the game. The duel would have to wait, her men were still dying below. She adjusted position, crawling through snow that burned her palms. Each movement was deliberate, each breath measured. She thought of the faces in the photograph, the promises they'd made. No one gets left behind. The army had left her behind. She would not do the same. Her radio crackled, a fragment of desperation breaking through. Out of ammo, multiple wounded. She didn't answer. She couldn't. They didn't need to know she was here. They didn't need to pin hope on a ghost. She shifted again, the barrel settling on another heat signature. Another wolf fell, but every trigger pull tugged at old wounds. Would any of them ever thank her if they knew? Would Javier even believe it was her saving him? The wind howled over the peaks. The snow thickened, obscuring sightlines except to her trained eye. She welcomed the blizzard. It was her ally, her cover, her absolution. Every snowflake erased a piece of her doubt. She whispered into the night, not sure if it was prayer or curse. 42 chances, don't waste them. Behind her eyelids, she saw again Velázquez's smug face at the tribunal. Heard the colonel's sentence like gunfire. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. The same man who'd ignored her intelligence reports. The same man who had probably known Mancilla's network existed all along. She let the anger sharpen her focus, not poison it. Anger made your aim tremble. Precision came from control. She inhaled, exhaled. The rifle bucked, another enemy silenced. In the valley below, confused shouts echoed. The wolves were panicking. She could almost hear them wondering how many shooters haunted the mountains. 3, 5, a platoon. The idea that it could be one woman never crossed their minds. Her lips curved, not in joy but in grim satisfaction. The legend of Vipra was about to breathe again, whether she wanted it or not. She felt the storm shift, a subtle change in the wind's pitch. Somewhere out there, Clov was listening, waiting, hunting her even as she hunted him. Two predators on the same snowfield, reading each other's movements through silence. But first, the men in the mine. the men who had abandoned her once, yet whose lives she would still guard. The mountains swallowed her next shot, then the next. Each bullet a wordless vow, I will not become what they made me. Each impact whispered into the storm, some debts are worth paying, even to those who broke you. Down in the valley, flashes of muzzle fire signaled the trapped seals, desperate defense. Somewhere among them, Javier Mendez might be cursing the cold, not knowing that the woman he betrayed was the reason he was still breathing. The storm raged on, and Mariana Vipra Suarez, exiled and broken but unbowed, tightened her grip on the Barrett, her breath sinking with the mountain's own. The hunt had begun again, and this time she would write the ending herself. She counted the rounds, 42 bullets, 42 chances to rewrite a past no one believed. The Barrett's weight pressed against her shoulder like an old guilt. Down in the valley, muzzle flashes flickered among the abandoned mine skeleton towers. The storm clawed at the mountainside, pulling her scent away, keeping her invisible. For now. She exhaled slowly and watched her breath dissolve into snowflakes. 11 bodies already lay cooling in the drift, yet the wolves were adjusting. Their shouts echoed up the walls of rock, sharp barks of Spanish, Russian, and something Balkan. Mancilla hadn't hired amateurs, these were operators with training, and among them somewhere was Dmitri Clov. Mariana crawled 2 meters to her left, the barrel sweeping as she moved. Wind angle 23 kilometers per hour shifting, humidity climbing. The math danced in her mind, comforting in its certainty. Math didn't betray you. Math didn't testify against you at a tribunal. Another target broke cover, carrying extra ammo toward the western ridge. She squeezed. The recoil thudded into her bones. A flare of heat winked out on the scope. 40 shots remaining. The radio on her chest crackled again, Jimna's voice faint through static. Anyone respond out of options. Mariana pressed her lips tight. They couldn't know she was here. If they did, word would spread. And if Velázquez caught wind, if the high command realized Vipra was alive and hunting, she'd be erased before she could fire another round. She slid deeper behind the rock ledge, letting snow bury her outline. For a moment the battlefield dissolved. She was back in the tribunal hall, harsh fluorescent lights, a row of brass insignia staring down like judges from Olympus. Javier Mendez, her brother-in-arms, had refused to meet her gaze as he repeated the official version. She hesitated. She misread the coordinates. Lies recited like prayers. And Velázquez, his tone perfectly measured, had signed her death warrant without lifting a finger. The memory burned hotter than the wind chill. She forced herself to breathe. Breathe. Focus. Don't give the past another shot at you. Below, a cluster of enemy signatures tightened their perimeter. Through the scope, she watched them drag a wounded man behind cover, one of theirs. Even wolves tended their own. Her finger hovered over the trigger. For a split second, the familiar doubt slid in. Do I end him now, or let mercy buy me another second later? She let him go. Mercy wasn't weakness, it was calculus. A wounded fighter slowed the pack. A glint to her right again. Clov, patient as winter. The Russian had to know her legend. Perhaps he'd studied her file like she'd studied his whispers. 2 hunters, 1 storm. She almost smiled, though her pulse kicked. She packed snow around the Barrett's bipod to muffle recoil and shifted another degree. 2 targets crossed paths near a ventilation shaft. She lined them up. 1 shot, 2 silhouettes crumpled. 38. In the valley's center, movement stirred. A faint flicker, her own men, or what used to be hers, attempting a breakout from the administration block. She could almost hear the muffled screams of the wounded, the smell of iron and cordite. She whispered to herself, the way she once whispered prayers before missions. 73 minutes, hold boys. The storm thickened, visibility shrinking to 100 meters for anyone without thermal optics, perfect for her. She adjusted for wind drift, aimed low on another signature. Pull, release, 37. The radio hissed, another broken fragment. Ammo gone, Mendez hit, bleeding out. Her chest tightened. Mendez, the man who'd signed her ruin. And still she couldn't let him die this way, not when she could stop it. The irony was cruel enough to taste. Another shadow crept along a catwalk, AK-103 slung tight, scanning the ridge. She took the shot. 36. Then silence, too much silence. The wolves were learning. They'd stopped charging blind. Somewhere out there, Clov was repositioning, patient as a glacier. She scanned her periphery, but the storm's white veil had swallowed every trace of him. She slithered backward, careful not to disturb the snow crust. Relocation, 30 meters upslope to a new angle. Her muscles ached with cold, but she ignored them. Pain was information. Register it, archive it, move on. A sudden flash, too brief, too sharp. The Dragunov's report followed a heartbeat later, echoing across the valley. A round screamed past her cheek, close enough to burn skin. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering. Clov had guessed her path. She smiled grimly. So you are that good. The game changed. She planted a decoy, her scarf tied to a rock, a faint heat pack beneath to mimic body warmth. Then she crawled wide, circling toward a secondary perch. Minutes stretched like hours. Another Dragunov shot rang out, right into the decoy. Her lips parted in a silent laugh. He'd bought it momentarily. But no time for triumph. Below, a new wave of enemy fighters poured from the tunnels, pushing toward the trapped commandos. They carried heavier firepower, grenade launchers flashing orange in the snow. The valley lit with chaos. She counted quickly. 24 men pinned, at least 60 enemies still alive. Her math whispered, impossible. Mariana's chest tightened again, not with fear but with something heavier, doubt. What if she couldn't do it? What if tonight proved Velázquez right, that she was reckless, unreliable, a liability? She shoved the thought away. Doubt was noise. Noise kills. She picked her next target, a man lining up an RPG at the admin block. Pull. The Barrett's thunder drowned the storm for a breath. The man collapsed, launcher skittering into the snow. 35. Another quick adjustment, 2 more sicarios running toward the main stairwell. 33. Static flared again, Jimna's voice rough with urgency. Mancilla moving, north exit, need cover. She froze. Mancilla himself, the snake who'd coiled around her life and squeezed until it broke, was slipping out. Every instinct screamed to pursue him now, to abandon the ridge and hunt him through the tunnels. But that would doom the 24. She clenched her jaw so tight it hurt. Duty first. Vengeance later. Another glint, the Russian again. She didn't fire this time. Instead, she aimed a foot left of where he'd be if he shifted to flank her. Pull. The round shattered rock, spraying shards across Clov's position. A flicker, a reflexive flinch, just enough to mark him. She dove sideways as his return shot cracked past her. Snow exploded where her head had been. For a second, fear spiked, raw and electric. But alongside it came something strange. Respect. 2 predators acknowledging each other's craft. She whispered into the wind, "One of us isn't seeing sunrise." Below, the trapped men began to move, taking advantage of her chaos. Through the scope, she saw them hauling their wounded, Mendez among them, limping but alive. She exhaled, shifting again, thinning the wolves chasing them. 31-30. A flash grenade erupted below, briefly bleaching the valley in white light. Even through the scope, the brightness stung her eyes. When vision cleared, several enemies had advanced dangerously close to the building's eastern flank. She adjusted elevation and fired, a heartbeat rhythm, breath, squeeze, recoil, re-aim. 28. The storm howled louder, its voice almost human. She remembered her last night in uniform, how Velázquez had said, "Soldiers who can't follow orders don't belong among us." Maybe he was right. Maybe she never belonged among people who chose obedience over conscience. The thought made her chest ache, but it steadied her hands. Another figure stumbled into her scope, dragging a radio pack. The coordinator cut him and the wolves would snarl blindly. She held her breath, letting the world narrow to a single heartbeat. Pull. The shot took him clean. The enemy comms fell into chaos below. Her watch ticked. 51 minutes since she'd left the cabin. 22 enemies down. 30 minutes before extraction, if extraction even came. The Dragunov barked again, far closer this time. A round chipped the rock by her knee. Clov had circled wider. He was reading her moves as well as she was reading his. The duel was tightening, spiraling toward inevitability. She crawled upslope, angling for higher ground. Each meter felt heavier, gravity conspiring with memories to drag her down. She thought of her mother's voice years ago. Mija, even snakes shed their skin. Was this her shedding, or was she just coiling tighter? The radio sputtered, Mendez's strained voice. Whoever's out there, thank you. She froze. He didn't know it was her. He didn't need to. But the gratitude cut deeper than she expected, like salt in an old wound. She let herself feel it just for a heartbeat, then shut it away. Emotions could wait, the math could not. Snow whipped harder, visibility plummeted. She adjusted windage again, gauging by the way flakes drifted sideways. Another shot clean. 27. Somewhere in the storm, the Dragunov stayed silent. Clov was repositioning again. The pause was almost worse than the gunfire. It meant he was thinking, hunting. The trapped commandos were on the move now, pushing toward the western edge of the complex. Their silhouettes flickered faintly in the scope, wounded men propped between comrades. She scanned ahead, spotted 2 enemies setting up an ambush. 2 quick squeezes. 25. Her shoulders ached, fingers numb. She flexed them, feeling the Barrett's familiar texture. The rifle was more than steel. It was the last honest thing in her life. It never lied. She murmured to herself, "Stay alive, Mendez. I'm not done with you." Another burst of gunfire below, closer now. She risked a glance from the scope and caught a brief movement on a distant ridge, a silhouette lowering itself prone. Clov again, closing the circle. She slid another magazine into place. The cold bit her skin, but her heartbeat slowed, 42 beats per minute. The void of the sniper took her. Breath, wind, range. She felt the mountain under her chest, the universe aligning in fractions of degrees. She fired, not at Clov directly, but a rock inches from his scope. Stone shards flew. A flash of movement betrayed his exact location. She rolled sideways as another Dragunov shot cracked where she'd been. Snow cascaded like an avalanche. A grim smile tugged her lips. The duel was only beginning. But first, the men in the valley, the mission, the code she could abandon. Mariana chambered another round, the storm wrapping her like a shroud, and whispered into the dark. 38 minutes left. Let's finish what they started. 11 bodies had fallen before, but now the mountain held its breath, because another hunter had marked her. The storm's howl dimmed to a whisper in Mariana's ears. All she could hear was the faint shift of snow against metal, far off on the ridge. Dmitri Clov was close, closer than he should be. She felt him like a heartbeat beneath the blizzard, 2 predators tuned to the same frequency. She repositioned, an inch at a time, letting the snow swallow her outline. The Barrett rested on its bipod, muzzle angled toward a shadowed crease in the rock. She knew his reputation. 27 confirmed in Chechnya. 3 operations never declassified. Survivors said he didn't just kill, you never even felt the crosshairs before the world went black. Her breath fogged the inside of her hood. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, summoning the memory of drills. Stay small, stay patient, stay alive. Below, the trapped commandos shifted positions. Their radio chatter, fragmented and panicked, crackled faintly in her earpiece. She heard Mendez's strained voice again, giving clipped orders despite the pain in his leg. He sounded older, weaker, but still a leader. She wondered if he thought of her now, or if he'd buried the memory of Vipra as thoroughly as the army had. Another flicker of movement, Clov's barrel, or the storm playing tricks. She waited, muscles cramping, pulse steady at 42. She let the mountain breathe first, then matched its rhythm. The Dragunov barked, sudden, violent. A chunk of granite disintegrated inches from her temple. The concussion slammed her cheek against the snow. He guessed her perch again. She rolled, heart hammering, then let instinct take over. One smooth motion, aim not at him, but at the rock 20 centimeters left of where she guessed his shoulder would be. Squeeze. Stone splinters erupted. A faint grunt carried across the gale. A fraction of a second later, his round hissed past her ribs, close enough that she felt its heat. The duel was fully alive now, each movement, each breath, a line of silent poetry. She crawled downslope, using the terrain's folds to mask her path. Memories threaded through her concentration. Velázquez's cold verdict, Lockhart's smug smile at the tribunal, Mendez's averted eyes. They'd made her a ghost to protect themselves. Yet here she was, flesh and bone and precision, saving them anyway. A cluster of enemy fighters broke from cover, attempting to flank the wounded. She pivoted, her world narrowing to crosshairs and target arcs. 3 quick shots, 22 left. She shifted again, tracking Clov. He was circling, trying to box her between his rifle and the valley below. He'd learned her rhythm already. She felt a flicker of admiration, bitter and reluctant. The storm thickened. Visibility dropped to 70 meters. Snow built on her hood, crusting her lashes. The wind stole warmth from her fingers, but she barely noticed. Her radio hissed, Jimna's voice, low and urgent. If anyone can hear this, we won't last another 20 minutes without cover fire. Mariana didn't answer. She let the words fuel her, a quiet vow threading through her pulse. She shifted her aim, lining up another shot on a machine gun nest pinning the commandos. The Barrett roared, sparks blossomed. The nest went dark. Somewhere behind the ridge, Clov fired again, too fast this time. The round went wide, whining into nothingness. He was frustrated, good. Frustration bred mistakes. She remembered her old instructor's voice. A perfect duel isn't about killing. It's about outlasting. She tightened her grip, letting that lesson ground her. The commandos began a desperate push toward the western perimeter, Mendez half carried by 2 comrades. Enemy fighters scrambled to intercept. Mariana's shots cut them down, each one a cold equation. 20, 19, 18. Clov was silent again, too silent. The pause was deliberate, a feint, a trap. She scanned the terrain, searching for irregularities, a faint depression in the snow fresh. He'd moved to flank. She adjusted, aiming not where he was, but where he would be. The Dragunov cracked, a decoy shot. She didn't flinch. Instead, she whispered to herself, patience. Then a whisper of movement to her left. She swung the Barrett too late, a muzzle flash. The bullet grazed her shoulder, searing pain tearing through thermal fabric and flesh. She bit back a cry, rolling behind a boulder. Blood warmed her sleeve, then chilled instantly. Breathing hard, she slid her pistol free with her left hand, keeping the Barrett ready with her right. The duel had closed to mid-range now, no longer a distant chess match but a knife fight with snow between them. Clov advanced cautiously, his silhouette a darker smudge against the white. He moved like water, like shadow, his legend justified. She thought briefly of the photo in her cabin, the grinning faces. Did any of them ever suspect she might one day die like this, anonymous on a frozen mountainside? Clov's head appeared, a flicker between drifts. She fired not at his skull but at a rock above him. The ricochet sent debris into his face. He flinched just enough. She pivoted, adjusted, squeezed. Silence, a body crumpled behind the ridge. She stayed still, breath shallow, watching for a trick. Minutes passed, the mountain whispered. No movement, no Dragunov's bark. Slowly, painfully, she crawled downslope. The storm wrapped them both in its indifferent embrace. She found him partly buried already, his pale eyes frozen wide in disbelief. She felt no triumph, only a quiet respect. She reached down, unclasped the dog tag from around his neck and tucked it into her pocket, a predator's code. No time to linger. The valley still burned. She shouldered the Barrett again and shifted her sights toward the complex. Enemy fighters were retreating in disarray, but Mancilla's core group still held strong points. And worse, she spotted movement near the north exit, an SUV convoy prepping to evacuate. Mancilla would slip away like smoke. Her radio crackled Jimna again. Extraction delayed. Heavy weather, hold your ground. Mariana breathed out through gritted teeth. Hold your ground, as if she hadn't been holding it for 3 years. The commandos broke into the open, Mendes limping, clutching a rifle he probably couldn't fire. They were exposed. She lined up shots, thinning the threats that closed around them. 17, 16. The storm eased briefly, unveiling a slice of moonlit valley. In that silvered light she saw Mendes glance toward the ridge as if sensing something. He couldn't know she was there, could he? She whispered, barely audible, "Keep moving, Javier, don't look for me." A flash at the mine's main building drew her eye. Lockhart, the deserter captain, shouting orders at the remaining fighters. His presence here was proof enough. This ambush was orchestrated at levels beyond Mancilla. Rage flickered, cold, surgical rage. Lockhart had known her tactics, her habits. He'd probably predicted she would come tonight, hopping to lure her. Well, she was here, and she wasn't playing by their rules. She adjusted elevation, lined up on a fighter guarding Lockhart's flank and squeezed. 15. Her shoulder throbbed where Clov's bullet had grazed her. She ignored the pain. She had ignored worse. Another convoy engine rumbled, Mancilla's escape window shrinking. She couldn't stop him yet, not without abandoning the wounded. She swallowed the bitter taste of restraint. She scanned again, the remaining wolves scattering under her relentless fire. 14. The commandos reached a defensible ridge and began setting perimeter fire. Through the scope, she watched Mendes collapse onto the snow, still issuing orders between ragged breaths. The sight twisted something in her chest, anger, pity, maybe a faint echo of old loyalty. The storm began to build again, wind screaming across the peaks. Visibility plummeted, perfect. She whispered to herself, "The mountain is with me." Somewhere below, Lockhart barked commands. Mancilla's voice answered, faint but distinct. Hearing him again, after all this time, stoked the fire in her belly. She pictured his face the day he'd ruined her life, calm, smug, certain she'd disappear quietly. The Barrett's barrel smoked in the cold. 14 rounds remained in this mag, with spares in her pack, enough if she didn't miss. The radio crackled one last time. Holding for extraction, Northridge compromised, need more cover. Mariana adjusted her scope and whispered to the ghosts of the tribunal, to Velázquez, to every man who doubted her, "I'm still here." She took another shot, 13, then another, 12. The valley flinched beneath her thunder, and for the first time in years, Mariana felt not vindication but purpose, not vengeance but clarity. The mountain had waited for her, the world had too. And now, beneath the storm and the stars, Vipra was hunting again. Inside the abandoned mine, the air smelled of rust, betrayal, and something worse, her own memories. Mariana crouched at the mouth of the tunnel, the Barrett slung across her back, pistol drawn, shoulder aching beneath dried blood. The storm outside muffled distant gunfire. The commandos had stabilized their perimeter for now. But the convoy engines had gone silent. That meant Mancilla and Lockhart were moving deeper underground, slipping through escape shafts the map didn't show. She flicked on her red-lensed headlamp. Light painted jagged stone walls and twisted beams, relics of a mine abandoned decades ago. Each creak of timber echoed like ghosts whispering. Her boots crunched over gravel. Every sound felt too loud. She steadied her breath, sinking with the mountain's pulse. 3 years ago, these tunnels had been the rumor she'd chased, evidence she'd begged Velázquez to investigate. He hadn't listened. Now they were her battlefield. Further in, she spotted a fresh cigarette butt, still warm. Lockhart's men were careless. Good. She holstered her pistol long enough to check her pack. 2 mags for the Barrett, 3 for the sidearm, 1 combat knife she'd kept since her first deployment. She touched the blade's worn grip like a talisman. A faint clatter echoed ahead. She froze, killed the lamp, and pressed against the wall. The dark swallowed her whole. She counted heartbeats, footsteps, 3 sets drawing closer. She crouched low, slipped behind a collapsed beam, and waited. Shadows stretched as the men passed, 2 cartel sicarios and 1 ex-military by his stance. They whispered about securing Mancilla's exit route. She moved like water, silent, patient. When the third man lagged a step, she struck knife across his throat, quick and clean. She caught the body, eased it down. The other 2 paused, sensing something, then turned. She fired twice. 2 suppressed cracks. 2 bodies dropped. She exhaled slowly, chest tightening, not from exertion but from the realization of how easy it still was. Killing had been muscle memory once. She had hoped exile would dull it. It hadn't. Further down, the tunnel widened into a chamber littered with rusted mining equipment. A flicker of light danced across the far wall, flashlights. She doused her own and crouched behind an old ore cart. Lockhart's voice echoed, steady and cold. "She's here. Vipra, don't underestimate her." Hearing her call sign, spoken like a curse, sent a shiver down her spine. So Lockhart had expected her, maybe even counted on her. Mancilla's tone was smooth, almost amused. "Then let her come. She's already dead, she just hasn't accepted it." She gritted her teeth. Rage tempted her trigger finger, but she forced herself to wait. 2 high-value targets, 1 chance. The men moved off toward a side shaft. She trailed them, steps ghosting over gravel. A distant boom outside suggested the SEALs were still exchanging fire. Time was running out. The shaft narrowed, beams sagging like broken ribs. Water dripped from the ceiling, each drop echoing like a metronome. Ahead, Lockhart halted, scanning the shadows. He raised his rifle toward a false tunnel mouth. She almost smiled. He still didn't know how to see her. A squeak of boots on wet stone. She shifted position, using an overhead beam as cover. Her shoulder throbbed. She clenched her jaw against the pain. Lockhart passed beneath her perch. She dropped silently behind him, muzzle kissing his spine. "Turn," she whispered. He stiffened. "Vipra." "Lower the rifle," she said. Instead, he lunged sideways, swinging the buttstock. The blow clipped her injured shoulder, white-hot pain exploding. She grunted, staggered, fired. The shot went wide, sparking against rock. He bolted deeper into the tunnel. She cursed under her breath and gave chase. The world shrank to footfalls and breath. Her lungs burned. The tunnel forked. She chose instinct, veering left. Lockhart emerged into a storage room, abandoned drills and crates stacked like barricades. He spun, rifle leveled. She slid behind a cart as rounds sparked around her. His voice carried over the din. "You shouldn't have come back. You could have stayed dead." She fired twice, forcing him down. "And let you erase 24 men tonight." 24 pawns, he shot back. "You know what's at stake, Velazquez, Mancilla, the whole operation. You think exposing us changes anything." His words were ice water on old wounds. She remembered Velazquez's promises, the way he dismissed her intel. A beam groaned overhead, showering dust. She crouched, flanked left. Lockhart peeked. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet tore through his thigh. He howled, collapsing behind a crate. She advanced, boots crunching glass. "It didn't have to be this way, Locke." His laugh was ragged. "We're soldiers, Mariana. The world isn't built on truth, it's built on orders." She paused, gun leveled. His face, pale and twisted with pain, was almost human again. A piece of her, small, tired, wanted to believe he'd once been honorable. But then she saw the radio in his hand, thumb pressing a distress code. She fired. The report cracked like judgment. Lockhart slumped, blood seeping into the dust. For a moment, silence, only her heartbeat and the drip of water. She closed her eyes briefly, mourning not the man, but the illusion that loyalty had meant something once. Then movement, Mancilla's voice echoing from a distant shaft. She grabbed the radio from Lockhart's corpse and pocketed it, then pressed forward. The tunnel twisted tighter, forcing her to hunch. Her lamp flickered. Her shoulder ached with every breath. Ahead, faint daylight gleamed through an old ventilation grate. Tire tracks scarred the dust. Mancilla was near the north exit. A sudden shout, two guards. They spotted her, weapons rising. She dropped low, fired 3 times. 2 fell. The third stumbled, coughing blood. She advanced, heartbeat steady now, purpose outweighing pain. She reached the exit, a crumbling shaft opening onto a ledge overlooking the frozen valley. Below, a black SUV idled, exhaust curling in the cold. Mancilla stood beside it, his coat flapping like a crow's wings. He looked up, meeting her eyes across the distance. Even through the storm's veil, his smirk was unmistakable. She raised the Barrett, but before she could fire, he shoved another man, a terrified civilian, into the line of sight. A hostage, a shield. Next time, Vipra, his voice carried, mocking. The SUV peeled out, disappearing into the swirling white. Mariana lowered the rifle, jaw tight. Rage coiled in her gut. She had him, and let him slip through her fingers again. She stood on the ledge for a long moment, the storm clawing at her coat. The mountain offered no comfort, only silence. Behind her, distant gunfire flared, the SEAL's perimeter buckling. She turned back toward the mine, anger dissolving into resolve. Mancilla would wait. The wounded would not. As she re-entered the tunnels, she felt the weight of what she'd done. Lockhart dead, Mancilla escaped, the truth still tangled. But beneath the guilt was something steadier, a quiet, unyielding vow. She would finish this. She jogged back through the dark passages, past the bodies cooling in the dust. Every drip of water, every creak of old timber reminded her how fragile everything was: trust, duty, even survival. Outside, the storm swallowed her once more. The valley flickered with tracer fire. The commandos still fought, backs to the ridge. She tightened her grip on the Barrett. Tonight wasn't about redemption. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about not letting darkness win again. She slid into position on the ridge, snow soaking her knees, and took aim, ready to buy the wounded another chance, even if it cost her her own. The mountain roared with gunfire and wind, but somewhere beneath it all, she thought she heard the faintest whisper, her own conscience reminding her why she came back. Some debts you pay, even to those who broke you. Was vengeance worth another drop of blood? Snow whipped across the western ridge, blurring friend and foe into ghosts. Mariana crouched behind a splintered boulder, the Barrett cradled like an old wound. Below, the SEAL survivors, bloodied, limping, formed a fragile perimeter around their wounded. Their muzzle flashes winked weakly against the dark, a faltering heartbeat. But the convoy's tire tracks mocked her in the snow. Mancilla had slipped away. Rage pressed hot against her ribs. She could abandon the wounded and chase him. She could end this nightmare tonight. The thought tempted her like a siren call. A voice crackled through the stolen radio on her vest, faint, deliberate. "Vipra, you're predictable." "Mancilla." She froze, teeth clenched. "I'm half a mile north," he said. "I could vanish, but I think you still need answers. You always did." Her breath steamed. "You'll die before sunrise." His chuckle was soft, chilling. "Maybe, but you won't pull that trigger without the truth. Come, Mariana, just you. The others can bleed without you, or you can learn why your life was stolen." She closed her eyes. This was the moment she'd imagined in exile, face to face, no witnesses. But walking into his trap meant leaving 24 men to die. Her duty screamed louder than vengeance. Another burst of gunfire from below yanked her back. A SEAL cried out, Jimna's voice, raw with fear, ordered suppressive fire. Mariana's jaw worked silently. Duty first, vengeance later. She pressed the transmit key. "You want me, Mancilla, you'll have to wait." She swung the Barrett toward the valley. Wolves were circling again, Mancilla's rearguard buying him time. She fired once, twice, each shot precise, surgical. 12, 11. The storm howled approval. Down below, Mendes looked up briefly toward the ridge, confusion flickering across his face. He couldn't know it was her. Not yet. Minutes stretched like hours. Helicopter blades finally whispered through the gale, a low, distant thump. Extraction. The SEALs signaled flares, their last grenades painting arcs of light across the snow. As the birds descended, Mariana scanned for stragglers. A lone figure moved along a rooftop, radio in hand, marking extraction coordinates for an ambush. She fired. 10. The choppers touched down in the valley, rotor wash flinging snow in violent spirals. Jimna's voice crackled on open comms. Load the wounded first. Mariana stayed prone, covering their retreat. For every fighter who tried to press forward, she sent a silent verdict. 9, 8. At last, Mendes was loaded aboard. Jimna was the last to climb into the cabin, scanning the ridge as if she could feel Mariana's presence. Their eyes almost met across the distance. Almost. The helicopters lifted, banking south, tail lights vanishing into storm. Silence returned to the mountain. Silence, and the faint crunch of footsteps behind her. Mariana pivoted, pistol ready. Mancilla stood 20 meters away, his coat whipping in the wind, a pistol dangling casually at his side. No SUV, no guards, just him, smiling like a man who owned the storm. "You stayed," he said, voice low. "I should have killed you years ago." "Maybe," he replied, "but then you'd never learn the rest." She advanced a step, boots sinking into fresh snow. "Say what you came to say." He shrugged. "Velázquez, Lockhart, me. It wasn't personal, it was business. The general needed a scapegoat, the cartel needed a cleaner route, and I needed a legend to vanish. You were perfect, honorable, stubborn, expendable." The words cut sharper than wind. She tightened her grip. "But here's the thing," Mancilla said, spreading his arms. "Kill me now and you bury the truth with me. The documents, the names, they'll vanish. But spare me," his smirk widened, "and I'll hand you everything. Velázquez's offshore accounts. The CIA handler who turned his head. Proof the world will believe." She hesitated, rage battling reason. Snow hissed against her hood. The mountain waited. "Why would you give me anything?" she asked. "Because even I'm tired of the game," he said quietly. "Let me disappear and I'll give you the world." For a heartbeat, she imagined it, justice without more killing, maybe even a chance to clear her name. But another memory surfaced, Lockhart's dying laugh. "The world isn't built on truth, it's built on orders." Her conscience pulsed in the silence. Was she saving lives by letting Mancilla vanish, or condemning others he'd destroy later? The storm gusted, flinging snow between them. Her breath came slow, measured. She lowered her pistol slightly. Mancilla's shoulders eased. He stepped closer. Then she saw it, the faint twitch of his hand, the subtle angle of his pistol. A trap. Her body moved before thought. She raised the Barrett one-handed, fired from the hip. The round punched through Mancilla's chest, hurling him backward. His pistol skittered across the ice. He lay there, breath shallow, eyes wide with disbelief. He coughed once, blood staining the snow. "You could have had everything." She knelt beside him, her face unreadable. "I already lost everything," she said softly. "Now I'm taking back what matters." His breath rattled once more, then stilled. She searched his coat quickly, finding a flash drive taped inside the lining. Proof enough to burn the empire down. She pocketed it, then stood. The mountain was quiet again. No applause, no vindication, just the soft hiss of falling snow and the distant echo of rotors fatting into night. She looked toward the horizon where the helicopters had vanished. She could join them, reveal herself, reclaim some piece of her life. But the thought of Mendes's shock, the questions, the politics, no, not yet. Instead, she turned north, toward the shadows where secrets still waited. The flash drive felt heavier than its size, like a burden she wasn't sure she could carry. She began the long walk back to her hidden bike, every step sinking into snow that would erase her tracks by morning. She thought of Lockhart's words, Mancilla's smirk, Velazquez's betrayal. Rage flickered again, but alongside it something steadier, resolve. Some truths had to be earned, some justice had to be taken, and some ghosts, hers included, had to stay ghosts a little longer. As the storm swallowed her silhouette, Mariana whispered into the empty night, "This isn't the end." The mountain didn't answer, it rarely did. But somewhere in the valley below, 24 men would live to see sunrise, never knowing the ghost who saved them. And for now, that was enough. They said she'd been destroyed, but the valley whispered otherwise. 3 days after the storm, the Espinazo Ridge was already erasing its scars. Wind scoured bloodstains from stone. Tracks vanished beneath fresh powder. To the world, it was as if no one had fought or bled here. But whispers traveled faster than helicopters, and those whispers spoke of an unseen ghost who had held back death. Mariana kept to the timberline, watching from a distance as recovery teams combed the valley. Through binoculars, she saw Mendes limp onto the landing pad, a cane now replacing the strength once in his stride. He glanced toward the mountains, toward her, though he couldn't know she was there. She lowered the binoculars before the ache in her chest grew heavier. Jaimna Villalobos, her friend, her defender, stood near the medical tents giving clipped orders. Jaimna's voice on the radio had been desperation and iron all at once. Mariana almost stepped forward, almost revealed herself. But Jaimna deserved a future unmarred by scandal. The army would drag her down alongside Mariana if they saw them together. Not yet. She turned away, boots crunching through untouched snow, and disappeared into the trees. By nightfall she had returned to her cabin. The fire sputtered low in the stove. She dropped the Barrett on the table, then placed the flash drive beside it. The tiny device glimmered in the firelight, a key to every locked door that had slammed against her 3 years ago. She plugged it into an old laptop she hadn't powered on in months. The screen flickered, lines of encrypted data scrolling past. Offshore accounts, shipment routes, communications between Velazquez, Lockhart, and names she didn't recognize. A web of betrayal reaching far beyond the cartel. She leaned back, exhaustion settling into her bones. The truth was bigger than she'd imagined. Exposing it would take more than a single bullet or a single night in the snow. The wind rattled the shutters. She stared at the ceiling, remembering Velazquez's words at her court-martial. Soldiers who question the chain of command do not belong among us. He hadn't just silenced her, he'd protected a conspiracy. Morning found her packing the cabin. Each creak of the floorboards matched the pounding of her thoughts. If she brought this evidence directly to the authorities, they would bury it and bury her again. She needed allies, but who could she trust? Mendes, Jaimna, perhaps, but dragging them into her war felt like another betrayal. She reached for the radio, then stopped. The mountain silence was safer for them and for her. For the next week she scouted quietly. She followed news reports of the Espinazo rescue. The headlines were sanitized. Brave SEAL unit extracted under fire. No mention of the mysterious cover fire from the ridge. No mention of Mancilla or Lockhart. No mention of her. In Bogota, her name would still be cursed in whispers. In Washington, Velazquez would be congratulated for stabilizing the region. The injustice burned like frostbite. One night under a canopy of stars, she hiked to a ridge overlooking the highway. A convoy rolled by, armored trucks, official insignia gleaming. She imagined Velazquez inside one of them, smug and untouchable. She whispered to the night, "You'll see me again." The stars offered no reply. Weeks passed. She lived like a shadow, hunting deer for food, moving between safe houses, watching the cartel's network unravel in small, chaotic ways after Mancilla's death. But she knew Velazquez was already reweaving it. Men like him always did. Then a faint knock at her cabin door. She froze, pistol drawn. Only 2 people in the world knew this place existed, Mendes and Jaimna. She opened the door to find Jaimna, tired, bruised, but alive. "You should be dead," Jimna said quietly. Mariana stepped aside, letting her in. The fire crackled as Jimna removed her gloves. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jimna's eyes flicked to the Barrett on the table, to the flash drive beside it. "You saved us," Jimna said. "I don't know why you didn't reveal yourself." Mariana stared into the fire. "Because they'd bury the truth again, and you with it." Jimna sat, her movements careful. "Mendes, he's asking questions. He thinks he knows." Mariana's jaw tightened. "Let him think, but tell him nothing." Jimna hesitated then. "Velasquez is already moving. He's calling this a rogue cartel ambush. He's pinning Lockhart as the sole traitor. And Mancilla's death, an accident during their retreat. He's washing his hands clean." Mariana picked up the flash drive, turning it over between her fingers. "Then I need a new battlefield." Jimna's gaze was steady. "What are you planning?" "Not planning," Mariana replied softly. "Hunting." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind outside. Finally, Jimna stood. "You're not alone, you know." Mariana shook her head. "I can't ask anyone to follow me into this." Jimna gave a small, sad smile. "You don't have to ask." She left before dawn, her tracks disappearing under fresh snow. Mariana watched her go, a strange mix of warmth and dread in her chest. Loyalty was a fragile thing. She couldn't risk it breaking again. Over the next months, Mariana became a ghost with purpose. She crossed borders on forged papers, always one step behind Velasquez's agents. She sent fragments of the flash drive's data to journalists under aliases, just enough to stir rumors, not enough to expose herself. In Istanbul, she watched 2 cartel couriers disappear into a police raid she'd quietly engineered. In Nairobi, she trailed a banker who handled Velasquez's offshore accounts. The world was vast, but his web was everywhere. One evening, on a rain-slicked street in Athens, she slipped into a cafe and found Mendes waiting in a back booth. He looked thinner, older, his cane leaning against the wall. "You're alive," he said simply. She slid into the seat opposite him. "You shouldn't be here." He studied her face, searching for the woman he'd betrayed. "I didn't testify because I hated you. I did it because Velasquez promised me it would save lives. I was wrong." Mariana's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. "We were all wrong." He leaned closer. "I can help." She shook her head. "No, you've got a family. Stay with them. Let the ghosts handle this." Mendes's eyes glistened. "You're not a ghost, Vipra." She left before he could say more. Outside, rain mingled with tears she didn't bother to wipe. Weeks later, in a cramped Berlin apartment, she decrypted another layer of Mancilla's files, communications pointing directly to Velasquez's personal accounts in Bogotá. Proof enough to end him. Proof that could topple careers, governments, maybe entire operations. But releasing it too soon would cost more innocent lives, people caught in the collapse. She had to be surgical. At night she lay awake, haunted by Mancilla's last words. "You could have had everything." Maybe he was right, maybe vengeance would never fill the void, but purpose could. She began planning her return to Bogotá, the city where she'd been condemned, the place where Velasquez felt safest. She would go back not as a supplicant begging for justice, but as a hunter with a clear shot. The mountain had taught her patience. The storm had taught her resilience. The ghosts had taught her silence. Now the world would learn what a patient storm and a silent ghost could do. She packed light Barrett, pistol, forged papers, and the flash drive. Before leaving the safe house, she paused at the window, watching snowflakes spiral under a street lamp. Somewhere out there, Jimna and Mendes were rebuilding their lives, believing in a fragile peace. She would keep that peace intact by finishing the war they couldn't fight. As she disappeared into the night, her heart was steady, but her conscience still whispered. She wasn't doing this for revenge alone. She was doing it because sometimes the world needed someone willing to stay unseen, to act when no one else would. The whispers followed her onto the plain, through customs, and into the streets of Bogotá. By the time she reached the safe house overlooking Velázquez's compound, the city's lights glittered like false promises. She settled the Barrett onto its stand, checked her angles, and began her vigil. Patience, timing, justice without fanfare. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Somewhere closer, a child laughed. The world kept turning, oblivious. And Mariana, Viper Suarez, once erased, once broken, was about to remind it that some ghosts do not rest. 6 months later, the Bosphorus glittered beneath an anonymous apartment, and her next hunt began. The city outside pulsed with neon and fairy horns, oblivious to the sniper assembling her rifle in a darkened room overlooking the strait. Mariana sat cross-legged on the floor, Barrett pieces spread like bones before a ritual. Every movement was silent, deliberate. The flash drive, now scratched and scuffed, lay beside her. Each decrypted folder had pointed to a larger rot: bank transfers, covert shipments, sanctioned betrayals. Velázquez wasn't merely corrupt. He was a linchpin holding an entire lattice of blood, money, and power. She set the scope into place, feeling the familiar click. Across the world, whispered networks were beginning to unravel. A banker retired after his files leaked in Geneva, a cartel lieutenant quietly detained in Tangier. Those weren't accidents. They were breadcrumbs she dropped, small fractures in Velázquez's empire to make him paranoid, to lure him out. Outside, rain slicked the cobblestones, making the city shimmer. She remembered Bogotá's streets after summer storms, when she and Méndez had walked back from training, boots soaked, laughing like ordinary soldiers who believed loyalty was permanent. The memory tightened her chest until she forced it away. Nostalgia was dangerous. A burner phone buzzed once. A message from an unlisted number. Velázquez attending Bogotá Defense Summit. 2 weeks. She stared at the screen. 2 weeks to move continents, infiltrate a city that wanted her dead, and finish what the mountain had begun. She dismantled the rifle again, tucking pieces into a false bottom case. Her passport bore a new name, her hair dyed darker, a ghost adapting its skin. In São Paulo, she met a journalist in a crowded market, a nervous man clutching a canvas bag. He'd been the one leaking fragments of the files under her guidance, but now his voice trembled. "They're closing in," he whispered. "2 men followed me last night." She pressed the bag back into his hands. "Disappear tonight." "What about the story?" "It'll live," she said. "You just need to." His eyes widened as he realized who she was, the ghost behind the whispers. Before he could speak again, she melted into the crowd. Each step of her journey felt heavier. Istanbul to São Paulo to Panama City, every airport a minefield of cameras and customs agents, but paranoia kept her alive. In Nairobi, she intercepted a courier carrying a satellite phone linked to Velázquez's inner circle. The man tried to plead for his family. She let him walk away after smashing the phone, her conscience gnawing. Not every victory had to draw blood. 2 nights later in Madrid, she found Méndez waiting on a park bench under dim lamps. His limp was worse, but his eyes burned with resolve. "You think you can do this alone?" he asked. "I have to," she replied. "Jimna's rebuilding a unit. Quietly, she could help." Mariana shook her head. "I won't drag her back into the fire." Méndez studied her for a long moment, then handed her a folded map. "Velázquez has safe houses here and in Cartagena. I pulled this from an old contact. You didn't get it from me." She hesitated, then took it. "Why are you helping me?" "Because," he said softly, "I lived because you didn't let me die. That debt doesn't go away." The weight of his words settled deep. She almost told him about the nightmares, the faces of men she'd killed, the way her shoulder ached when it rained. But silence was safer. She gave him a nod and slipped away into the night. The hunt's final arc began in Bogotá. She arrived under another name, blending with business travelers and soldiers on leave. The city's altitude stole her breath at first, a reminder of old battles fought on familiar soil. She rented a tiny room above a bakery that smelled of sweet bread and gasoline. From there, she watched Velázquez's compound with a telescope, mapping guard rotations, camera sweeps, and escape routes. Each evening, as the bakery closed, she scribbled notes by candlelight. Northgate change 2310. Black SUV regular pattern. Velázquez on balcony drinks at dawn. The flash drive's final encrypted file revealed more than bank accounts. It showed schedules, meeting logs, and a damning memo bearing Velázquez's signature authorizing covert arms trades. If she released this properly, entire governments would reel. But getting out alive with the evidence would be harder than any sniper shot. She found herself standing on the rooftop one night, Bogotá's lights shimmering below like fallen constellations. A stray dog barked. Somewhere a child laughed. Life went on beneath the weight of her mission. She whispered to the city, one clean shot or one clean leak. Choose Vipra. Inside, her heart warred with itself, duty against rage, justice against mercy. She thought of Mancilla's smirk, Lockhart's last breath, Mendez's broken voice. She thought of Gimna's tired eyes when she'd said, "You're not alone." And still, Mariana felt alone. The next day, she followed one of Velázquez's aides to a cafe near Montserrat. She sat 2 tables away, pretending to read a newspaper. When the aide's phone buzzed, she caught a glimpse of a secure channel code, enough to access a secondary server. A risk, but she took it. That night, hunched over her laptop, she siphoned files under layers of encryption. Each line of data was another brick removed from Velázquez's fortress. But Velázquez was not careless. By dawn, she sensed movement on the street outside, too deliberate to be random pedestrians. Shadows paused under her window. A floorboard creaked where no one should be. She grabbed the Barrett case and slipped through a back stairwell just as boots thundered up the front. Outside, dawn's first light painted the city gold. She melted into the crowd, just another commuter clutching a case. By dusk, she'd relocated to a safe house near La Candelaria. From its cracked balcony, she could see the defense summit's venue. Velázquez would appear tomorrow on that balcony with diplomats and cameras, believing himself untouchable. She checked her rifle, laid out the pieces like a prayer. Her shoulder twinged, a phantom reminder of Clov's bullet. She inhaled, exhaled, steadying her nerves. The line between justice and vengeance blurred under the city lights. She thought of Gimna's warning. The world isn't built on truth, it's built on orders. Maybe so, but tonight she would break both. As the bakery's scent of bread drifted through the safe-house window, Mariana whispered to the empty room, "Velázquez, this is your last sunrise." But even as she said it, doubt flickered. A child's laughter below reminded her of the cost of chaos. Killing Velázquez might expose the conspiracy, but it could also ignite a war that would swallow innocence. She tightened her grip on the Barrett. Tomorrow she would decide, not with anger, not with despair, but with the precision only a ghost could wield. At 1,763 meters, her heartbeat slowed to 40 beats per minute. Bogotá shimmered in the dawn haze, rooftops glittering like scattered coins. On a cracked balcony above La Candelaria, Mariana Suarez lay prone, the Barrett stock pressed to her bruised shoulder. The city's heartbeat throbbed faintly through cobblestones and power lines. She matched her breathing to its rhythm, slow, steady, invisible. Through her scope, the Defense Summit's hotel swam into view. Velázquez's sweet balcony, lined with potted palms and fluttering flags, framed the man who had stolen her life. He emerged in a pressed uniform, flanked by aides, his smile easy for the cameras gathering below. Behind that facade lay files authorizing assassinations, weapons deals, betrayals that had carved holes in nations. She adjusted her aim, windage compensating for the morning breeze funneling between high-rises. Crosshairs hovered over Velázquez's chest. One squeeze, and the world would shift. But she didn't pull, not yet. Down below, a child's laughter carried, A girl chasing a yellow balloon between security barriers. Mariana's finger trembled. The city's sounds, vendors shouting, a bus engine growling, flooded in, grounding her in the fragile reality beyond vengeance. She thought of Mancilla's last words, "You could have had everything." He'd been wrong. Everything was never the goal, justice was, but justice wasn't always a bullet. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a rooftop across the street, a glint of glass, a counter-sniper. Velázquez had expected someone, maybe her. The duel's circle tightened again. She rolled slightly, aiming low, sending a warning shot that shattered a potted plant near Velázquez's feet. Screams erupted below. Velázquez ducked, aides scrambling. Cameras caught chaos, not a corpse but a revelation. A second shot tore through a nearby banner, splintering wood, enough to suggest she could have ended him if she'd wanted. Police sirens wailed, cutting through morning air. The counter-sniper swung toward her position. She was already moving, rolling, packing the Barrett into its case, sprinting across the adjacent rooftop. Boots pounded stairs below, security teams converging. She vaulted a narrow alley, landing hard, breath ragged. By the time officers swarmed the balcony she'd used, Mariana was a shadow among street vendors, scarf hiding her face. She slipped into a bakery, bought a small loaf to blend in, and exited through the back. The smell of fresh bread clung to her as she disappeared into Bogotá's veins. Hours later, news alerts flooded phones. Assassination attempt at defense summit. But journalists examining leaked files, released anonymously minutes after her warning shots, began publishing explosive evidence of Velázquez's corruption. Bank statements, emails, orders signed in his own hand. Velázquez's empire trembled, not from a bullet but from the truth. Mariana watched the headlines on a flickering cafe TV, her hood low. A reporter speculated about a phantom whistleblower. Another showed grainy footage of Velázquez's startled face as the first shot shattered the pot. The world was already shifting. She felt no triumph, only quiet relief and exhaustion so deep it ached in her bones. She had chosen restraint, and restraint had spoken louder than revenge. Night settled over the city. She met Méndez in a dim alley just once. He hobbled forward, eyes wide. "That was you." She didn't deny it. He stared at her for a long moment, then reached into his coat and pressed something into her hand, a small, weathered medal. "For Espinazo," he said. "They'll never know, but I will." Her throat tightened. She closed his fingers around the medal again. "Keep it. I'm just a ghost, remember." His voice cracked. "Ghosts don't save lives." She turned before the ache could root too deep. Disappearing again was easier. She melted into Bogotá's streets, the city swallowing her whole. Weeks passed. Velázquez faced hearings, his power fracturing. Cartel networks splintered. Journalists whispered about the phantom sniper. And in distant mountains under a sky raw with stars, a small timber cabin waited, its windows dark, its walls lined with silence. Mariana returned one cold evening, boots sinking into snow. Inside, the Barrett rested on the table, cleaned and ready. The flash drive was gone, its secrets scattered across the world like seeds. She lit the stove, the flames licking the dark. For the first time in years, the cabin felt less like a prison and more like a refuge. She sank onto the cot, exhaustion washing over her. The mountain outside was unchanged, timeless, indifferent. But inside her, something had shifted. The rage was quieter now, tempered by the knowledge that she'd acted without becoming what she hated. She stared at the fire, remembering the laughter of that child in Bogotá. The balloon drifting against barricades. The way life insists on its own fragile beauty, even amid betrayal and bloodshed. She thought of Jaime's promise, "You're not alone," and Méndez's gratitude. Perhaps one day she would see them again, perhaps not. Ghosts have their own paths. Snow whispered against the windows. The world would go on, messy and unjust, but tonight she had tilted it, just slightly toward something better. That was enough. She murmured into the flickering firelight, a soft vow only the mountain could hear. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And with that, Vipra, the sniper they erased, the ghost they feared, closed her eyes, the storm outside humming like a lullaby, and let the mountain hold her in its quiet, eternal embrace.